Hickok 45 here. Welcome to the Hickok 45 Talks channel. Yep, that's where you are. Not that it matters. I'm just glad you found your way over here. This is where I just yak about random things and without being in a very big hurry. And of course, that shows in the views, right? It's reflected. Uh, Someone asked me to talk about what are my views on tipping. My views on tipping. Give my views on tipping. Well, I don't mind if I have my coffee, dude. This morning, I'm enjoying coffee, talking to, a couple of people here on the camera, right? Uh, Tipping. Well, I've probably evolved in my thinking about tipping over the decades, I guess, a little bit. I think when I was younger, I might have resented it a little bit. Didn't eat out that much when I was younger. People didn't eat out as often anyway. There weren't as many opportunities to tip. Uh, I don't know, in the really 60s, when I was growing up, 50s, 60s, and then in the 70s, uh, when I was starting my career, teaching at that time and whatever, even then, people just didn't eat out every other day, the way we do now. Uh, and it wasn't even as big a deal. And at my income level in the 70s, if we ate out, it was fast food most of the time, probably. Uh, but tipping came up, of course. And, I would try to tip whatever I, I think maybe the parameters were a little different. Was it 15% at that time was considered pretty good tip? I don't recall now. Didn't eat out enough, but uh, as I started traveling, I got into business in the '80s, publishing, traveling. I was eating out all the time, so it was a bigger deal. I ate out, every meal, for a week maybe, and so I had to establish patterns for that and what I felt was appropriate. And like anybody, if the service is bad, it'll tip us all. I've never been uh, one to just like tip a penny or something if the service was horrible, or give it like a really, really lame tip. Maybe not as big, maybe just leave 10% if the service was very good. I don't know. But we should be more judgmental there because it is supposed to be for the quality of the service, right? And one thing before I get into that, I don't agree with tipping when there's no service provided. It's gotten out of hand. That is one of the big factors. I know it might have been on this person's mind to ask about that. You go somewhere where you go up and order your food at the counter or whatever it is. There is no real service. It's like tipping the person at the gas station or something when you go in, buy a bottle of water or whatever. Whoever's working behind it, it's gotten a little bit out of hand. It's kind of weird. So I don't do that. I don't tip that unless there's some kind of service. Someone's bringing something to my table, right? Um, so anyway, it varies. I think obviously a person's income is a big factor. If you're on a tight budget and eating out is a pretty big deal, eating a nice, decent restaurant, whatever, it's a bit of a stretch to begin with. So you're not going to give some 50% tip, probably, right? That makes sense. But now, if you can afford to eat out for even that one meal a week or whatever it is, I think a person ought to go ahead and tip if you can, the full, 20% is considered acceptable, for good service, and that's what I do. I tip at least 20%. Uh, I do the calculations, in my head. I pay cash most of the time when I eat out. I I just do the calculation in my head. It's pretty simple. It's 10% of something is pretty simple, and double that, and I can get to the 20% pretty easily in my brain, and I make sure I leave at least that, and I usually tip more than that. Uh, And I, uh, I have adjusted my thinking a little bit in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years or so. I have a nice income, and I donate to charity and the food bank and different things. Uh, and organizations when there's a problem, like people helping with disasters and disaster relief and that kind of thing. And of course, you're inundated with mail for the next 10 years when you do that. But uh, I, it's hard to trust the gigantic charity organizations. And you wonder how this relates. It relates to tipping. I never fully trust them. I don't have a natural paranoia about things, but it's funny. I was just talking to my wife yesterday. One of the commercials came on for Tunnels to Towers, and I said I hate it that I am actually bothered by. It's really not right that I am annoyed by any charity that just advertises all the time. They always have another celebrity, and they're always advertising these long, drawn-out commercials and things. And it's not because I don't understand the economy of it. It's like the NRA. People have complained about, well, lots of reasons to complain about them in the past, at least, about all the mail they get. They should use that to fund gun rights, and I don't want anything to do with them. They send too much mail, and they're always trying to solicit whatever, and they paid spokesman, whatever. Well, anybody that knows how business works knows that all those direct mail campaigns pay off in lots of money donated or new members. Same with the commercials on TV for charities. Yeah, they're spending a ton of money on those commercials, but they do it and they pay the spokespeople lots of money and different things. But it comes back probably tenfold in donations. So they're actually helping more people by doing that. Okay, y'all are aware of that. As annoying as it is, and no matter how many times you want to just say without thinking, well, they should be spending that money helping people instead of buying commercials. Well, those commercials actually end up enabling them to help more people. Okay, I understand that. I understand that, but it's just still it's such a it's a we got the big pharma, the big oil, and all the other military industrial all these huge organizations we tend to not trust, almost because they're so big, so much money involved. Well, big charities kind of the same way. It's hard to trust it. It's all going the right place, and then how much of it goes to administrative costs, all that kind of thing. And even though I participate, it's still just okay. Well, all of that to say, if I'm sitting in a Waffle House or any restaurant, and there's some server, often in a Waffle House, it's a female, not always, and they're just working their butt off, and they are not going out and getting in a Lamborghini. They're probably getting into a 10-year-old Camry, beat up Camry, and going home and taking care of 3 kids or something, and single mom or whatever it is, and that is where I will tip big quite often. Okay, especially if I'm on the road. Uh, I, I have, as I just indicated, I have doubts sometimes about charities, even though I know, you can research them and then, determine whether, what percentage is going to the cause and that kind of thing. But I am pretty sure that Waffle House waitress is putting every penny to a good cause. And not just Waffle House, I use that as an example. Somebody who is just working his or her butt off, waiting on tables in a restaurant, they're not doing that as a hobby. They're not like I am this. They're trying to make ends meet. and they may be trying to become an actor in Hollywood or a comedian or whatever they're trying to do, or they're just trying to survive to the next paycheck. Uh, so when it comes to tipping, I definitely tip. I mean, I'll tip 100% sometimes in Waffle House or whatever. You know, I mean, the bill's $13 or something or whatever. But so it's not like tipping 100%. We got $100 meal, a steak or something. But so I tend to, depending on the service, but I will. So it's a little bit of a selfish thing, maybe. But it's like when I go into a restaurant, depending on the level of the restaurant and all that makes a difference. But I quite often I see somebody there. This is somebody that is working, and this every penny of this is going to go to that person. And you know they are not probably making 300,000 a year, put it that way. And then now with not having to pay as much tax on their tips, depending on their income, right? What is it? The first 25,000 is tip or is tax free and that kind of thing. And depending on their income, if they're making 75,000 or under, it's some kind of ballpark like that. I know. And so, you know, I feel like that money is going to a good cause. That's what I'm getting at. It's going to a worthy cause. You know, 99% of cases. And so when it comes to tipping, uh, I would encourage people to tip as well as you can. Yeah. Um, and I don't want to be the person, if it's someplace I eat at regularly, that they see, oh man, here comes the big tipper. I don't want to be that person. I tip generously wherever I am. But if I'm on the road, uh, I might overdo it, you know, because I don't know if I'll ever be back in that Waffle House or in that restaurant or whatever. So it's not a big deal anyway. And it just depends. Just depends. I you know, I was at a Waffle House on the road not long ago, and I did that. I just took the guy, and she was so good. Very. It wasn't because she was a supermodel. Okay, don't start thinking that. She was just a plain old gal working hard and very efficient and very helpful. And I just, as I was before I left, I just took $100 bill and threw her and handed it to her and said thank you. And I mean, I would rather donate right there in a situation like that than send it to some massive organization that you know, where, well, $40 goes to this and 20 to that, and there was some amount of it goes to actually helping people, and I do that. But I just, from a selfish standpoint, I partly selfish. I just feel like I'm doing something more effective with my money, with my discretionary income, when I do that than just dumping it into a big truck, you know, and sending it along with all the other millions to another outfit. You know, I just really do. So anyway, that's kind of my feeling about tipping. I tip pretty generously, at least 20%, usually more than that. And then occasionally, if I'm on the road or somewhere where I'm not going, and I get really good service, and it's that level of restaurant where, well, I'll tell you what it comes down to. As you may have heard folks talk about this, there are situations where you can help somebody, uh, where $50 or $20 or $100 makes a much bigger difference in their life than it does in my life, for example. Okay, it makes, you know, something I won't really necessarily miss, uh, but to them, it's a uh, it's a big number. It makes a big difference in their day. I've been there. I taught school for 29 years. I never missed any meals. My wife did a good job and all that. But I was in that Ramsey program, man. I would keep money in envelopes and cash, and I know I would chart out my breakfast and picking up a chicken biscuit or something for on the way to work and different things, and how much money I would allot for my breakfast or my lunch, and make sure I didn't exceed that and different things. And there are times where if I had found $100 bill, oh man, that's a big deal, you know? Not as big a deal as it might be to that Waffle House waitress, I don't know. You never know anybody's exact situation. But look on her face kind of told me. Anyway, that's my feelings about tipping. I don't believe in tipping for bad service very much. I feel sorry. I don't feel sorry, but I kind of empathize with how tough that job is. And so I'm not going to just not tip, probably. It would take a horrendous experience for me to not tip. Okay? So I'm going to tip, 20% at least. Okay? That's just me. My dad was about that. He was old school. He was born in 1918, and he didn't think, well, they just charge enough. He was one of those guys. He was a nice guy, but he said they only just charge what the food costs and shouldn't have to pay extra, that kind of thing. So he didn't quite grasp what's going on at a restaurant and how they pay people and all that sort of thing. And it's like I always want to tell them, well, Dad, just don't go out and eat, if you don't think you should tip, because really you need to tip. And he did in later life, but anyway, he was old school, went through the Depression and all that kind of thing, and so it's a different world to him. So that's it. I've rambled too much, but I would encourage everybody to tip. I've never been a server. You hear people who have been talk about it, and they're pretty opinionated about it. I've never been a server, but I've had a lot of jobs that were, I will say, kind of crappy or really hard jobs in construction or in painting, doing things out in the hot sun all summer and all that kind of. I've had some jobs that were just tough, and I can look at what someone's doing and kind of evaluate how difficult that is, and how much work it takes, and I'm fine with rewarding them for. The other thing, which is a big factor. There's so many people who just now think, oh, they don't need to work. They don't have to work. They get a government check somehow. They're playing the system, and more people trying to do that. Somebody in a freaking restaurant working their butt off, at least they are working, and those are the people I want to reward. I have some control over that. I have some control. Like I said, it's partly selfish. I have control over that, in that case, whom I'm helping, right? My giant tax bite, I don't complain about it. I pay my taxes more than I should, probably, and things I could deduct, that I don't, I'm sure. And I pay that big tax quarterly. I pay it early. I don't begrudge it. I'm happy to have a big tax bill. That means I make good money. But where that goes, wow, I don't want to know, probably, right? So anyway, that is one piece of money that I can control, and I know who's getting it, right? So anyway, again, as usual, I've rambled too much, but you asked the question, so you get an answer. Yeah. So anyway, tip big or go home if you can. Life is good.